Welcome to another installment of Friday Q&A. I hope you're all doing excellent. If you want to support the channel going forward, you can find links to my music and my Patreon in the video description. If you have questions for next week's Q&A, let me know in the comments. If you want to know something about gear, if you want to know something about music or writing, or just ask me some kind of funny personal question, do it. I would love to hear from you. And let's get straight into the questions, because I did a video with my Les Paul Custom, which is a legit Les Paul Custom, but I did a similar thing to this guitar, which we'll talk about in a second, and I put tape on the Gibson logo. It's just a joke. That's all there is to it. I'm not trying to cover anything up. This isn't a grand conspiracy. It's not a Chibson or anything like that. That's just a joke. If you didn't watch that Gibson Play Authentic disaster of a video last year, it won't make sense. If you do want some good light entertainment and you enjoy flogging a dead horse like I do, go and watch that video again. You can find it on the internet. But yeah, that's just a joke. So no need to take it too seriously. Having said that, though, this guitar is well, it doesn't say Gibson on the headstock because I put tape on it because it's a joke, but this is a Les Paul artist from 1980, and a massive shout out to Tim at MT Guitars for basically helping me resurrect this guitar. There's a few things on this, namely the bridge. This is something called a Stets bar. Look, I'm over here, but you can see the Stets bar in there. By the way, I'm going to screen cap this for the thumbnail so you see this, because they're the things you have to do for YouTube. Anyway, so someone had put a Carla tremolo on this guitar really badly, just chiseled the top out. And I don't like Carlas, and I don't like Les Pauls with gaping holes on the front. So I was able to find a Stets bar and put it on there, and it actually fits perfectly. I almost never use the trem. It's mostly just there because it conveniently covers up this like crater in the top of the guitar. Then on the back, these guitars shipped with this giant plate which contained a bunch of electronics. Half of them were missing with the guitar. Also, a lot of the lacquer had come off the back, and again, thanks to Tim for doing this. He stripped the finish, and there is this beautiful matte finish on the back, and you can actually see these ebony inserts on the back of the neck. It's gorgeous, and it feels amazing, and it's had a full refret and a new nut. All the hardware has been replaced. All the electronics have been replaced because there was like a half-working kind of Gibson Moog circuit in there. So it's got traditional Les Paul wiring in it. These are pickups by Martin A. Smith, also from Perth. Shout out to Martin because he does amazing work. And what are these? These are Grover tuners. That's kind of cool. So this thing very much came back from the dead. And yeah, now it's a really good sounding Les Paul. This is my live FM3 preset as well. I like that a lot. It's, yeah, just basically transformed this guitar. That era of Gibsons are not super duper desirable, but this plays as well as anything right now, which leads into the second question regarding the Plec, because Tim at MT Guitars is the only place in Perth where you can get your guitar plecked. And I've done a couple of videos about this. I actually went to see Tim a few weeks ago and I shot some footage of him plecking a guitar. I was meant to put it in a video a few weeks ago, but I'll overlay it on this. Essentially, a Plec, the whole idea behind it is you can take the strings off the guitar and it will keep the guitar under string tension while it automates things like a fret dress and cutting a nut and a whole bunch of other features. Tim often uses it to correct the radius on fretboards that are either warped or bumpy or that aren't consistent. It can do a whole bunch of things, but it is only as good as the luthier on the other end, because what it does is it provides really accurate data, and then that data needs to be reinterpreted by an actual human being, and a lot of the actual setup work still needs to be done by hand. So it's not just this thing that like, a magic oven, you put your $300 Squire in and it comes out playing like a Sir. There's still quite a lot of manual work in there, and but yeah, it works great. Like, this guitar's been refretted and plecked, and I love it. So I would highly recommend at least trying it on one of your guitars. And but if you do that, you'll probably want to do it to all of them because they play really, really nice. So that is that's kind of a really brief overview of the Plek. You should go and check out my other videos that I have all about it. All right, maybe time for some wah with this thing. Next question, any gear that I regret not buying? You know, they say you only regret the things you don't do. I can think of a few things off the top of my head. I was lucky enough to go to New York in 2013. We did like a 10-week ragdoll tour in the States, and then I had some time afterwards. One of my best mates from school now lives and works in New York, so shout out to everybody there who has been doing it super tough at the moment. But 2013, the Aussie dollar was really, really good, and I went to Sam Ash. I've talked about this before, and they had a bunch of lovely Sir guitars there, and I seriously considered buying one just because, you know, compared to what we could get in Australia, it was far, far more affordable, and they had some really great guitars there, so I kind of regret not doing that. I also had like $0 at the time, so I don't know if I even would have been able to get back to the country then. The other one is, this was maybe 2 years ago, there was an awesome like PRS hollow body in black, so kind of matching my mirror and my single cut, and it was really well priced, and I ummed and ahed about it, and I didn't end up buying it, and I think it's since sold. And now if you want to get a hollow body, especially with the dollar at the moment and everything else going on, it's a lot of money. They're really, really good guitars, but I do kind of regret not buying that one. Yeah, and I mean, I really do try to moderate that feeling of like, should I actually get this? You know, I've already got a whole bunch of gear. Do I really need that guitar? Do I really need that pedal? So yeah, I try not to think about those things, but they're the two kind of, I guess, guitar-related regrets at the moment. Another one, my good mate Umi from Perth had one of the really early dual rectifiers, which sounded so different to mine, and he sold that amp when he moved to the States, and I also kind of regret not buying that and just kind of keeping it in the family, you know, because he sold it to somebody else, and now it's just kind of gone. And that amp was on a lot of recording sessions, and yeah, it was just like, it just basically doesn't sound like a rectifier. It sounds more like a Soldano or something like that. So, okay, there's three things. The more I think about it, the more I'm gonna remember and regret. Best way to set up your Axe effects with a Focusrite Scarlett to get basically the most optimal results. If you've got SPDIF on your Scarlett, I would just go from the Axe output, the SPDIF output that is, to the input of the Scarlett. That is a digital out. That will save you one stage of AD and then DA conversion. That is probably going to be the easiest way to run everything. That's how I used to run my AX8 when I had a Focusrite interface, and now I actually run my Axe FX3 and my FM3 via SPDIF to my Apollo. I just have an SPDIF to optical converter to do that. USA versus Australian made gear, what is better or more desirable? I don't really buy into the idea that a piece of gear's worth is determined by like the geographical location, unless it's something like a really, you know, pristinely made acoustic instrument or something like that, where climatic conditions are going to play a part. But, you know, when it comes to like electric guitars, you know, I have guitars like this, which were made in the United States, and the build quality on it is decent. It's not great. I have a Dean V, which was made in Indonesia, where the build quality is really pretty good. I have guitars that my dad made here in Australia, totally by hand from scratch, which are unbelievable. They're beautiful pieces of craftsmanship. And I have, you know, other pieces of gear, like say the Axe FX3, which is, you know, yeah, it's totally designed in the United States. The chassis and a bunch of other things, the electronic components are made in China. That doesn't mean that it sound like, how does that impact the sound? We're talking about like, you know, electric current, basically. It's not that important, in my opinion. So, a piece of gear either speaks to you and it works, or it doesn't. And that is pretty much independent of location, especially now, the age we live in. We live in a globalized economy where you can get information at the absolute press of a touch screen or something like that. We're not talking about the post World War II economic boom where the United States really did innovate in a lot of areas of industrialization. That's just not the case anymore, and I don't think that's the case with these musical instruments that we absolutely love. So I will play my American-made guitar with some Australian-made pickups into my Axe effects, and I'll get to another question in a second. All right, what do we got next? We talked about gear that I regret not buying. Have I ever tried a Morley wah pedal? Yes, we did a gig in someone's living room the very first time I went to the States, and I used someone's rig, and it had a Morley wah pedal in it, and it was weird for me because I grew up playing a Crybaby, but it sounded awesome, and I do like that kind of kickback feature. That was very, very, very cool. So I think that's maybe the only time I've ever tried a Morley wah. I should try one again, because it sounded pretty good. Do I have any footage playing that Wolfgang guitar live? Not that I'm aware of for ragdoll shows. I am trying to dig up some footage of that King Diamond Merciful Fate tribute gig that I did with some buddies of mine, because I did use that guitar for that. So if I can find that, then there'll definitely be some footage of the Wolfie in action. The gear rabbit hole for guitar versus studio gear, yeah, I'm glad that I'm just into collecting guitar gear and not like vintage LA2As and Neve preamps and stuff like that, because then that is that's just like a whole other level of spending cash on cool stuff, and I don't think I'm quite ready for that just yet. Stale tones, you've been playing something on your Axe effects or your amp or something and it's starting to sound stale and you're sick of it. What do? This is a very, very normal thing to happen as a human being. And I'll make an analogy. When I used to go to school, I would have my mum make me a sandwich every day for lunch. And I noticed that I was going through these phases. Like, I'd have a peanut butter sandwich for lunch every day for 2 weeks. And the first day I had it, it was the most exhilarating, amazing sandwich I'd ever eaten. And 2 weeks later, I'd be halfway through this sandwich just going, this is the same sandwich, but well, it wasn't actually the same sandwich. You know what I mean. I'm not talking about that like episode of The Simpsons where Homer eats the same sandwich for like 2 weeks. No, it's a peanut butter sandwich made fresh. You knew that though. And I was like eating the sandwich after the second week and I was like, I'm not into this. And then the next week I would have a Vegemite sandwich and it was just exhilarating and new and fresh and different. And, that is very much a part of our psychology. That we just kind of, we get sick of things when they're in abundance, basically. So what I like to do is if I'm playing, it's normally one of three things. I will just use a totally different style of amplifier. For example, at the moment I'm playing a Mark Series amp. I might go over to some kind of Fender amp, like the Bassman, and I might play on the neck pickup of my guitar. It will not only sound different, it will actually make me play different, which I really like. And then, if I start to get sick of that, let's dial up a rectifier and crush some skulls in drop D. And if you do have an Axe FX, it does give you that ability to do these things so quickly and so easily. Otherwise, another thing, you can just take a break from playing guitar. You can give your ears a rest, make sure you're really well hydrated, go for a walk, get some sunshine or something, then come back and enjoy that. And they would be my suggestions for freshening things up. Sometimes just not doing it can really help. Have I ever used the ADA MP1 through the dual rectifier effects loop? Yes, I have. If you go and listen to the Ragdoll song Letting Go off Back to Zero, the album Back to Zero, our last album, myself and friend of the channel, Troy and Aberban, when we were recording that song, we were like, it would be cool to get the ADA on a track. And we decided to put it on that track. So if you listen to that, I think there's a double of my dual rectifier and then a double with the ADA MP1, which is, I think, kind of cool. Wonderful stuff. Two more questions to go. On the topic of the Nuno Betancourt signature amp, which basically has a built-in like rat distortion on one of the channels. This was not really a question. I think this was DMAC asked this or mentioned this, that it was that amp was designed by Peter King, and Peter owns Joondalup Music in Perth, which is my local music store. So shout out to all the people over at Joondalup Music. Pete and his family, I think his son Dan now runs the store, and they're still going and they're still chugging through everything. So kudos to them. And it's kind of cool that there's that little Perth connection, because I think Nuno married Susie DiMarchi from the Baby Animals, who are from Perth. And Ryan actually has a really good Nuno story, but maybe if you're interested in hearing that, I'll get him to tell you all about it, and I'll put it in next week's Q&A. All right, last observation, the Axe-FX 3 Mark II. It looks like an Axe-FX with a much better screen and a whole bunch more storage space. I think a bunch of people flipped out and thought this is like going to make the current generation, or like if you've got an Axe-FX 3, the Mark I, the OG, as you would, that it's going to make it obsolete somehow. But they've made it pretty clear that the same firmware will run in the Mark I and the Mark II. The Mark II obviously has the updated screen. You can do some stuff with the little blue logo and make it not blue if you like. And there's, I think, double the storage space for presets and IRs. And I'm sure Cliff Chase is up to something in the long term that is going to eventuate with all that extra storage. But in terms of the firmware, they've stated that, yeah, that's not going to change. If you've got a Mark I Axe-FX 3, you're going to be good for a long time. Even if it never got another update, it would still be pretty amazing. I mean, the ADA MP1 or the Mesa Studio preamp haven't had an update for a long time, and they sound pretty darn good. Alrighty, there's the screen going, letting me know that I have officially hit peak babble. If you have any questions related to this Q&A or anything else on the channel, please let me know in the comments. Again, you can find links to my Patreon, or you can buy some Ragdoll music or some Ragdoll merch using the Bandcamp link. Look, guys, have a great weekend. Stay safe, be good to one another, play a whole bunch of guitar, and I will see you very, very soon. Oh, this doesn't have a little knob on it. I've been using that the whole time and I didn't notice that. I gotta find the knob for it.